The small town of Willow Creek lay nestled deep within the Appalachian Mountains, surrounded by dense forests and rolling hills. It was a place where time seemed to move slower, where people knew each other by name, and secrets were passed down, like heirlooms from one generation to the next. But even in such a peaceful town, there were places no one dared to visit after dark. One of those places was the old cemetery on the edge of town. The cemetery had been abandoned for decades. Its once neat rows of tombstones were now overtaken by weeds and ivy, while some stones had crumbled entirely, their inscriptions lost to time. Most locals avoided it not just because it was run down, but also because of the stories that circulated about strange things happening there at night. Whispers of ghostly figures, unexplained noises, and cold breezes that came out of nowhere kept even the bravest away. Yet, despite these warnings, Ethan Moore found himself drawn to the graveyard. Ethan had only moved to Willow Creek a few weeks ago with his family. His father had gotten a job at the local factory, and they left behind their bustling city life in search of something quieter. For Ethan, however, the change wasn't easy. He missed his friends, the excitement of the city, and the sense of belonging he used to feel. To cope, he spent most of his free time exploring the woods behind his new house, hoping to find something interesting or exciting. One afternoon, as he wandered deeper into the forest than ever before, he stumbled upon the cemetery. At first glance, it looked ordinary, just another forgotten piece of history. But something about it intrigued him. Maybe it was the way the sunlight filtered through the canopy above, casting long shadows across the ground. Or maybe it was the silence so complete that it felt almost unnatural. Whatever it was, Ethan couldn't resist stepping inside. As he walked among the graves, he noticed how different they all were. Some were grand and ornate, with intricate carvings and statues of angels. Others were simple slabs of stone, weathered and cracked with age. But one grave stood out more than the rest, a modest granite headstone with the name Clara Bennett etched into its surface. Beneath her name were two dates, 1903 and 1923. She had died exactly 100 years ago. Ethan crouched down to get a closer look. There was something about Clara's grave that made him pause. Perhaps it was the fact that her death date ended in the same year as the town's founding anniversary. Or maybe it was the faint scent of wildflowers lingering in the air. Though none grew nearby, whatever it was, Ethan felt an inexplicable connection to this stranger, whose life had ended so long ago. He stayed there for a while, reading the inscription over and over again. Eventually, the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Reluctantly, Ethan decided to head back home. As he turned to leave, however, he felt a sudden chill run down his spine. It wasn't the kind of cold you'd expect on a crisp autumn evening. It was deeper, sharper, like ice seeping into his bones. He glanced around but saw nothing unusual. Still, the feeling lingered, making him quicken his pace until he reached the safety of his backyard. That night, Ethan couldn't shake off what had happened. He tried distracting himself by watching TV or playing video games, but his mind kept drifting back to the cemetery. Who was Clara Bennett? How did she die? And why did her grave feel so alive? These questions swirled in his head as he tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. Finally, curiosity got the better of him. Around midnight, when the house was silent and everyone else was asleep, Ethan grabbed his flashlight and slipped outside. The streets of Willow Creek were deserted, bathed in the pale glow of streetlights. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint smell of damp earth. Heart-pounding, Ethan made his way back to the cemetery. When he arrived, the place looked even spookier under the cover of darkness. Moonlight filtered through the trees, casting eerie shadows that danced across the ground. Every step he took seemed louder than usual, crunching against the dry leaves scattered everywhere. Despite his nerves, Ethan pressed on, heading straight for Clara's grave. Standing in front of the headstone, he shone his flashlight on it, illuminating the faded letters. Clara Bennett, he whispered, as if saying her name aloud might summon her spirit. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, out of nowhere, he heard it, a soft whisper carried on the wind. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably real. "Help me." Ethan froze, his breath catching in his throat. The voice was feminine, gentle yet filled with sorrow. He spun around, shining his flashlight in every direction, but saw no one. The cemetery was empty, just as it had been earlier. Shaking his head, he told himself it was probably just his imagination playing tricks on him. But then he heard it again, clearer this time. "Please." This time, Ethan couldn't ignore it. His heart raced as he scanned the area, looking for the source of the voice. That's when he saw her, a figure standing a few feet away. She was translucent, her form shimmering like heat waves rising off asphalt. Her clothes were old-fashioned, tattered and worn, and her face was pale, almost ghostly. Yet there was a beauty about her that Ethan couldn't deny. It was Clara. She didn't speak directly to him, but instead gestured toward the nearby woods, her movements slow and deliberate. Before Ethan could react, she vanished into thin air, leaving him alone in the cemetery once again. For a moment, Ethan stood rooted to the spot, trying to process what he had just seen. Was it real? Had he truly encountered a ghost? Or was he losing his mind? Either way, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't let this go. Something about Clara's plea pulled at him, urging him to uncover the truth about her past. With trembling hands, Ethan switched off his flashlight and hurried back home. Once inside, he collapsed onto his bed, his mind racing with questions. Who was Clara Bennett? Why had she appeared to him? And what did she want him to find in the woods? Though exhausted, Ethan couldn't fall asleep. Instead, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the night over and over again. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change his life forever. The next morning, Ethan woke up feeling groggy but restless. Sleep had eluded him for most of the night, his mind replaying the encounter with Clara over and over again. He couldn't shake the image of her translucent form or the sound of her voice pleading for help. What did she want? Why had she appeared to him? These questions gnawed at him, refusing to let him rest. After breakfast, Ethan decided he needed answers. He didn't know much about Clara Bennett, but he figured someone must have written about her somewhere. The local library seemed like the best place to start. With determination burning inside him, he grabbed his backpack and headed downtown. The Willow Creek Public Library was a small, cozy building, tucked between a bakery and a hardware store. Its exterior was painted a cheerful shade of blue, but inside it felt quiet and serious, as if the weight of history hung heavy in the air. Ethan pushed open the door, hearing the familiar creak of old wood beneath his feet. The librarian behind the counter looked up when he entered, a young woman with short brown wood and glasses perched on her nose. "Can I help you?" she asked, smiling warmly. Ethan hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I'm looking for information about someone who lived here a long time ago. Her name is Clara Bennett." The librarian's smile widened slightly. "Clara Bennett, huh? That's an interesting topic. Let me see what we've got." She stood up and gestured for Ethan to follow her. They walked past shelves lined with books, some so old their spines were cracked and faded. Finally, they reached a corner dedicated to local history. "This is where we keep all the records related to Willow Creek," the librarian explained, pulling out a chair for him. "My name's Mia, by the way. If you need anything, just let me know." Ethan nodded gratefully. "Thanks, Mia. I really appreciate it." Mia handed him a stack of newspapers and folders bound together with string. "These are articles from the early 1900s. There might be something about Clara in there. Good luck." With that, she returned to her desk, leaving Ethan alone to sift through the materials. He started carefully flipping through brittle pages and scanning headlines. At first, he found nothing useful, just mundane stories about town events and farming tips. But then, buried deep within a pile of clippings, he stumbled upon an article titled, "Tragic Death of Local Woman Shocks Town." His heart skipped a beat as he began reading. According to the article, Clara Bennett had vanished without a trace in the summer of 1923. Weeks later, her body was discovered floating in the river near the edge of town. The authorities ruled her death accidental, claiming she must have drowned after falling into the water. However, rumors swirled among the townsfolk that foul play was involved. Intrigued, Ethan continued digging. Another clipping mentioned how Clara had been seen arguing with her wealthy uncle, Richard Caldwell, shortly before her disappearance. People speculated that Richard disapproved of Clara's relationship with a traveling artist named Daniel Harper. Their romance had caused quite a scandal, given Daniel's reputation as an outsider and his lack of social standing. Ethan jotted down notes as he read, piecing together fragments of Clara's story. It seemed she had been trapped in a life controlled by her uncle, yearning for freedom but unable to escape. Daniel had offered her hope, promising to take her away from Willow Creek and start anew elsewhere. But their plans were cut short when Richard intervened, threatening to ruin Daniel if he didn't leave town immediately. As Ethan flipped through more pages, he noticed a sketch tucked between two sheets of paper. It depicted a young woman sitting by a tree, her face serene yet tinged with sadness. The artist's initials, D.H., were scrawled in the corner. Ethan realized this must have been Daniel Harper's work. The resemblance to Clara was uncanny, capturing not only her physical features but also the sorrow hidden behind her eyes. By the time Ethan looked up, hours had passed. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting the library in a golden glow. Mia approached him, holding a cup of coffee. "You've been at it for a while," she said, placing the drink on the table. "Any luck?" Ethan nodded, showing her the notes he'd taken. "Yeah, I think I'm getting somewhere. Clara was involved with this guy, Daniel Harper. They wanted to run away together, but her uncle stopped them. Then she disappeared, and everyone thought she drowned. But something about it feels off." Mia frowned, leaning closer to examine the sketch. "That does sound suspicious. Do you think her uncle had something to do with it?" "It's possible," Ethan replied. "But I need more evidence. Maybe there's something else here. Letters, diaries, anything that could tell me what really happened." Together, they searched deeper into the archives, uncovering more clues. One folder contained letters written by Daniel Harper during his stay in Willow Creek. In them, he described his love for Clara and their desperate attempts to escape her uncle's control. He also mentioned meeting a reclusive herbalist who lived on the outskirts of town, someone rumored to possess strange knowledge about herbs and potions. One particular line caught Ethan's attention. "Clara believes the herbalist can help us fake her death. If we succeed, we'll finally be free." His pulse quickened. Could Clara's drowning have been staged? And if so, why hadn't she left town afterward? Mia watched Ethan intently as he pieced the puzzle together. "This is fascinating," she admitted. "Do you think Clara faked her death and then got caught?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "But I have to find out. There's still so much I don't understand." Mia smiled encouragingly. "Well, count me in. I want to help." Over the next few days, Ethan and Mia became a team, spending countless hours poring over documents and discussing theories. They learned that Daniel had fled Willow Creek shortly after Clara's supposed death, leaving behind his sketches and writings. Rumors suggested he died penniless and broken-hearted, never recovering from losing the woman he loved. Despite their progress, one question remained unanswered. Why had Clara appeared to Ethan? What unfinished business tied her spirit to the cemetery after all these years? On the fourth night of their investigation, Ethan and Mia stayed late at the library, determined to uncover more leads. Outside, rain pattered against the windows, creating a soothing rhythm. Inside, the lamplight cast soft shadows across the room, making the atmosphere feel almost magical. Just as Ethan was about to call it quits, Mia gasped. She held up a crumpled piece of paper she'd found wedged between the pages of an old journal. It was a map, drawn in faded ink, marking locations around Willow Creek. One spot stood out, a cabin labeled D.H., near the woods. "This has to be Daniel's cabin," Mia exclaimed, her eyes lighting up. If we go there, maybe we'll find more answers. Ethan stared at the map, his heart racing. This could be the breakthrough they needed. But the thought of venturing into the woods at night made his stomach churn. Still, he knew they couldn't wait. We'll go tomorrow, he said firmly. First thing in the morning. Mia nodded, folding the map carefully. Agreed. Let's get some rest. We're going to need it. As they packed up their things and turned off the lights, Ethan couldn't help but glance out the window. Through the rain-streaked glass, he could see the faint outline of the cemetery under the moonlight. Somewhere out there, Clara's spirit lingered, waiting for him to uncover the truth. Little did Ethan know, the journey ahead would lead him far beyond the boundaries of logic and reason, and straight into the heart of a mystery that had haunted Willow Creek for a century. The next morning, Ethan woke up before sunrise, his mind buzzing with anticipation. He had barely slept, too excited about visiting Daniel Harper's cabin. It felt like they were finally closing in on the truth about Clara Bennett. After grabbing some supplies, a flashlight, water bottles, and snacks, he met Mia outside the library. She was already waiting, clutching a backpack and holding a lantern. "Ready?" she asked, her voice tinged with both excitement and nervousness. "As ready as I'll ever be," Ethan replied, trying to sound confident despite the butterflies in his stomach. They set off toward the woods, following the map they'd found the night before. The path wasn't easy. Thick underbrush snagged at their clothes and roots jutted out from the ground, making it hard to walk without tripping. The deeper they went, the quieter the forest became. Even the birds seemed to fall silent, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. After nearly 2 hours of hiking, they reached the clearing marked on the map. What they found there took their breath away, or rather, what little remained of it. The cabin was nothing more than a shell now, its wooden walls blackened by fire and half collapsed into ruin. Vines snaked through the gaps, reclaiming the structure for nature. Yet, there was something hauntingly beautiful about it, like a forgotten piece of history frozen in time. "This must be it," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. Ethan nodded, stepping cautiously inside. The floorboards groaned under his weight, but they held firm. Sunlight filtered through holes in the roof, casting beams of light across the debris-covered floor. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, giving the space an almost otherworldly glow. Their first discovery came quickly. Beneath a pile of charred wood, Ethan spotted something unusual, a leather-bound sketchbook. Carefully, he pulled it free and opened it, revealing page after page of delicate pencil drawings. Most of them depicted the same woman, Clara. Her face was captured in various poses, smiling, gazing off into the distance, even crying. Each sketch was accompanied by notes written in shaky handwriting, detailing moments from Daniel and Clara's life together. Mia knelt beside Ethan, peering over his shoulder. "These are incredible," she murmured. "You can tell how much he loved her." Ethan flipped through the pages until one particular drawing caught his eye. It showed Clara standing beside a massive oak tree, her hand resting on its trunk. Carved into the bark were strange symbols that looked ancient and unfamiliar. Beneath the sketch, Daniel had scrawled a cryptic message. "Here lies the key." "What does that mean?" Mia asked, frowning. "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "But we need to find out." They spent the next hour searching the cabin for anything else that might help. They uncovered a few more items. An old pocket watch engraved with Clara's initials, a bundle of letters tied with string, and a small tin box containing dried herbs, but nothing that explained the meaning of the symbols or the mysterious note. Finally, Ethan stood up, brushing dirt off his jeans. "We're not going to figure this out here. We need to find that tree." Using the sketch as a reference, they retraced their steps back toward the cemetery. Along the way, they kept an eye out for any trees matching the description. The forest seemed endless, each oak blending into the next. Just when frustration began to creep in, Mia pointed ahead. "Look," standing near the edge of the woods was a towering oak, its gnarled branches stretching toward the sky. Its trunk was partially hidden by ivy, but when they pushed the vines aside, they saw it. the same symbols carved into the bark, exactly as depicted in Daniel's drawing. Ethan ran his fingers over the markings, feeling the rough grooves beneath his skin. They were intricate, almost like runes, and radiated a faint warmth that sent shivers down his spine. "This has to be it," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. Mia handed him the lantern, which cast a soft yellow glow over the tree. Together they examined the carvings more closely. At first glance, they appeared random, but upon closer inspection, Ethan noticed patterns within the lines. Some symbols resembled stars, while others looked like waves or spirals. Whatever they meant, they were clearly important. Then, as Ethan pressed lightly against the trunk, something unexpected happened. The ground trembled slightly beneath their feet, and a section of the earth near the base of the tree shifted. Slowly, a hidden compartment opened, revealing a small wooden chest nestled inside. Heart pounding, Ethan reached in and pulled it out. The chest was heavier than he expected, its surface etched with the same symbols as the tree. He hesitated for a moment, unsure whether opening it was a good idea. But curiosity got the better of him. With Mia watching intently, he lifted the lid. Inside lay a dusty journal wrapped in oilcloth to protect it from the elements. Carefully, Ethan unwrapped it and opened the cover. The handwriting inside belonged to Daniel Harper. "This is it," Ethan breathed, flipping through the pages. "This could tell us everything." Mia leaned closer, her eyes wide with wonder. "Do you think it explains what happened to Clara?" "It has to," Ethan replied. "Let's take it back to the library and read it properly." As they made their way back to town, the weight of the journal in Ethan's hands felt monumental. It was as though they were carrying a piece of history, and possibly the answer to the mystery that had haunted Willow Creek for a century. When they returned to the library, they settled into their usual spot, surrounded by piles of documents and books. Ethan opened the journal and they began reading together. The entries started shortly after Daniel arrived in Willow Creek, describing his initial impressions of the town and his growing feelings for Clara. As they progressed, however, the tone grew darker. Daniel wrote about discovering Clara's secret, that she possessed latent magical abilities passed down through her maternal line. These powers allowed her to manipulate nature, heal wounds, and even influence emotions. Her uncle, Richard Caldwell, had known about them all along and sought to exploit them for his own gain. When Clara refused, he tightened his control over her, forbidding her from leaving the house or seeing anyone outside the family. Daniel also revealed that Clara had confided in him about her plan to fake her death using a potion given to her by the herbalist. By drinking it, she would appear lifeless for several hours, giving her enough time to escape unnoticed. However, things went horribly wrong. According to Daniel, Richard intercepted the plan, drugging Clara instead and dumping her unconscious body in the river to ensure she would never leave. But the journal contained one final revelation. Clara wasn't entirely human. Her magical lineage granted her certain immunities, including the ability to bind her spirit to the physical realm. Before her supposed death, she had performed a ritual to tether herself to the world, hoping to someday exact revenge on her uncle. Ethan stared at the page, his mind racing. "So that's why she's still here," he said softly. "She's been waiting all this time to finish what she started." Mia nodded, her expression solemn. "And now she's reaching out to you. Maybe she thinks you can help her." "But how?" Ethan asked, running a hand through his hair. "Her uncle is long dead. How can I make things right for her?" "We'll figure it out," Mia assured him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We've come this far. We can't stop now." As they sat there poring over the journal, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced toward the window, half expecting to see Clara standing outside. But the street was empty, bathed in the soft glow of twilight. Still, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, it would change everything. For him, for Mia, and for the restless spirit of Clara Bennett. Ethan couldn't sleep that night, Every time he closed his eyes, images of Clara's translucent form appeared in his mind, her pleading voice echoing softly. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. She had reached out to him for a reason, and now that he knew the truth about her past, he couldn't ignore it. But what could he possibly do? Her uncle, Richard Caldwell, was long dead, and the people who wronged her were gone too. The next morning, Ethan met Mia at the library again. They sat at their usual table, surrounded by piles of documents and notes they'd gathered over the past few days. The journal lay open between them, its pages revealing secrets that had been buried for a century. Ethan stared at the final entry, where Daniel wrote about Clara's ritual to bind her spirit to the world. It was clear she wanted justice, not just for herself, but for everyone affected by her uncle's cruelty. "We need to tell someone," Ethan said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Not just us, everyone." Mia looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" "I mean we should share this with the whole town," Ethan explained, his voice growing more confident as he spoke. "Clara's story deserves to be heard. If we expose what Richard Caldwell did to her, maybe it'll bring closure, not just for her, but for everyone connected to this." Mia hesitated, chewing her lip thoughtfully. "It's risky," she said finally. "People might not believe us. They could think we're crazy or making things up." "Maybe," Ethan admitted. "But don't you think it's worth trying? We have proof, the journal, the sketches, the letters. All we need is a way to show it to everyone." After some discussion, they decided to organize a public presentation at the town hall. It wasn't easy convincing the mayor to let them use the space, but once Ethan explained their intentions and hinted at the historical significance of their findings, they were granted permission. Over the next few days, Ethan and Mia worked tirelessly to prepare. They photocopied key pages from the journal, framed Daniel's sketches, and created posters announcing the event. Word spread quickly around Willow Creek. By the evening of the presentation, nearly half the town had gathered in the meeting room. People filled the rows of wooden chairs, murmuring among themselves as they waited for Ethan to speak. Some looked skeptical, others curious, but all seemed eager to hear what two teenagers had uncovered about their town's history. When Ethan stepped up to the podium, his heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Beside him, Mia gave him an encouraging smile. Taking a deep breath, he began. "Good evening, everyone," he started, his voice steady despite his nerves. "My name is Ethan Moore, and this is my friend Mia Roberts. Over the past week, we've been researching something unusual, something tied to our town's past. What we've discovered isn't just a story, it's a piece of history that's been hidden for far too long." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "This is the story of Clara Bennett." As Ethan spoke, he held up the journal, showing the audience the faded handwriting and sketches inside. He recounted everything they had learned. Clara's forbidden romance with Daniel Harper, her abusive uncle Richard Caldwell, and the tragic events that led to her supposed death. He described how Clara had faked her drowning only to be betrayed by her uncle, who ensured she would never escape. And finally, he revealed the truth about her magical lineage and her decision to bind her spirit to the world. Throughout the presentation, the room remained eerily quiet. No one interrupted or laughed, instead people listened intently, their expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to sadness. When Ethan finished speaking, he pinned the sketches of Clara on the bulletin board behind him, allowing the audience to see her face, the face of a woman whose life had been stolen from her. Mia took over then, explaining how they had found the journal and the cabin in the woods. She emphasized the importance of acknowledging the past even when it was painful. "Clara's story isn't just about her," Mia said, her voice firm. "It's about justice, forgiveness, and remembering those who can no longer speak for themselves." When they finished, the room erupted into murmurs. Some people shook their heads in disbelief, while others nodded solemnly. A few approached Ethan and Mia afterward, thanking them for sharing the story. One elderly woman, whose great-grandfather had known Clara, tearfully confirmed parts of the tale. "I always wondered why no one talked about her," she said. "Now, I understand." The real turning point came when members of the Caldwell family stood up. Descendants of Richard Caldwell, they had inherited his wealth and influence in the town. For years, the family had maintained a proud reputation, unaware, or perhaps deliberately ignoring, the darker aspects of their ancestors' legacy. But tonight, faced with undeniable evidence, they chose to acknowledge the truth. One of them, a middle-aged man named Mr. Caldwell, addressed the crowd. "On behalf of my family," he began, his voice heavy with emotion, "I want to apologize for what happened to Clara Bennett. We cannot change the past, but we can honor her memory and ensure that her story is never forgotten." To symbolize this commitment, the mayor announced plans to dedicate a memorial plaque in Clara's honor near the cemetery. It would officially clear her name and serve as a reminder of the injustices she endured. The crowd applauded, and Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had done it. They had brought Clara's story to light. That night after the meeting ended, Ethan and Mia returned to the cemetery. Armed with flashlights, they walked silently among the graves until they reached Clara's headstone. The air was colder than usual, and faint wisps of fog swirled around their feet. Standing side by side, they waited. Moments later, she appeared, just as she had before. Her translucent form shimmered in the moonlight, her expression softer now, less sorrowful. She looked at Ethan and Mia, gratitude shining in her eyes. Then, without a word, she raised her hand in a gesture of thanks before fading away completely. For the first time since they began this journey, Ethan felt peace. He knew Clara's spirit had finally found rest. As he and Mia walked home together, the stars twinkling above them, he realized something important. Sometimes the smallest actions, like uncovering the truth, could have the biggest impact. And, though the cemetery remained silent once again, the legend of Clara Bennett lived on, a testament to love, loss, and redemption. The days following the town hall meeting passed quickly for Ethan and Mia. News of Clara Bennett's story spread like wildfire throughout Willow Creek, sparking conversations in every corner of the town. People who had never given much thought to the old cemetery or its forgotten graves now found themselves drawn to it, curious about the woman whose tragic tale had been hidden for so long. The Caldwell family worked swiftly to make amends, donating funds to restore the cemetery and commissioning the memorial plaque promised by the mayor. Ethan and Mia visited the cemetery often during this time, watching as workers cleaned up the overgrown weeds and repaired broken tombstones. Each visit felt different from the last. The oppressive silence that once hung over the place seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of calm and renewal. Even the air felt warmer, as if the weight of Clara's unresolved pain had finally begun to dissolve. When the memorial plaque was unveiled, the entire town gathered to witness the ceremony. It was a small but heartfelt event, held just as the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon. The golden sunlight illuminated the polished black stone of the plaque, making the gold lettering shine brightly against it. Beneath Clara's name were the words, "A life remembered, a spirit set free." As the mayor spoke briefly about the importance of remembering history and learning from it, Ethan couldn't help but glance around the crowd. He saw familiar faces, neighbors, teachers, shopkeepers, and even strangers who had traveled from nearby towns to pay their respects. Among them were members of the Caldwell family, standing quietly with bowed heads, their presence a silent acknowledgement of the wrongs committed by their ancestor. When the ceremony ended, people lingered for a while, paying their respects to Clara's grave. Some left flowers, others simply stood in quiet reflection. Ethan and Mia stayed behind after most of the crowd had dispersed, wanting a moment alone with Clara. Standing in front of her headstone, Ethan felt a mix of emotions: pride, relief, and a lingering sadness. "Do you think she knows?" he asked Mia softly, his voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. Mia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I think she does. She must feel free." They didn't have to wait long to find out. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the ground, the temperature dropped suddenly. A gentle breeze swept through the cemetery, carrying with it the faint scent of wildflowers. And then she appeared. Clara. This time, her form was brighter, less ghostly than before. Her translucent figure shimmered like sunlight on water, and her face bore an expression of pure gratitude. She looked at Ethan and Mia, her lips curving into a soft smile. Though she didn't speak, her eyes conveyed everything: thankfulness, peace, and closure. Ethan took a step forward, his heart swelling with emotion. "We did it, Clara," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Your story won't be forgotten anymore." Clara raised her hand in a gesture of farewell, her smile widening ever so slightly. Then, as the wind picked up again, she began to fade, her form dissolving into tiny particles of light that drifted upward toward the sky. Within moments, she was gone, leaving behind only the faint echo of her presence. For a long while, Ethan and Mia stood in silence, absorbing what had just happened. They knew deep down that Clara's spirit had finally moved on, freed from the bonds that had kept her tethered to the world for a century. The cemetery felt lighter now, almost welcoming, as if it had reclaimed its purpose as a place of remembrance rather than sorrow. Later that afternoon, Ethan and Mia sat together on a bench near the library, reflecting on everything they had experienced. The journey had changed them both in ways they hadn't anticipated. What had started as simple curiosity had turned into something far greater, a mission to uncover the truth and bring justice to someone who could no longer fight for herself. "I can't believe it's over," Mia said, breaking the silence. "It feels like we've been working on this forever." Ethan nodded, leaning back against the bench. "Yeah, but it doesn't feel like the end, does it? Like, I don't know. It feels like the beginning of something new." Mia tilted her head, looking at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe this is just the start of us doing more stuff like this," Ethan replied, shrugging. "There are probably tons of other stories out there waiting to be told. Maybe we could keep digging, keep uncovering things people have forgotten." Mia smiled, her eyes lighting up. "You're talking about becoming amateur historians, aren't you?" "Something like that," Ethan admitted, grinning. "Or detectives, or whatever you want to call it. We make a pretty good team, don't we?" "We really do," Mia agreed, laughing softly. "But let's take a break first, okay? My brain needs a rest after all this." Ethan laughed too, feeling a sense of contentment wash over him. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't consumed by questions or worries. Instead, he felt proud of what they had accomplished, not just for Clara, but for themselves. As the days turned into weeks, life in Willow Creek returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could get after such an extraordinary event. The cemetery became a popular spot for visitors, not because of its eerie reputation, but because of its beauty and the poignant story behind it. Schoolchildren visited on field trips, learning about Clara's life and the lessons her story taught, about courage, love, and forgiveness. Artists came to sketch the restored headstones and the memorial plaque, capturing the serene atmosphere on canvas. Ethan and Mia continued to explore their newfound passion for uncovering hidden histories. They spent hours poring over old records, interviewing elderly residents, and piecing together fragments of the past. Their efforts inspired others in the community to share their own stories, creating a tapestry of memories that connected generations. But no matter how many new mysteries they uncovered, Ethan and Mia always remembered Clara. Her story had ignited something within them, a desire to seek out truth and honor those who had been silenced. Every time they passed the cemetery, they paused for a moment, silently thanking her for guiding them on this incredible journey. And though Clara's spirit was no longer bound to the physical world, her legacy lived on, not just in the plaque, dedicated to her memory, but in the hearts of everyone she had touched. Through Ethan and Mia's determination, she had become more than a name etched into stone. She was a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even in death one's voice could still be heard. As autumn gave way to winter, snow blanketed the cemetery, transforming it into a peaceful winter wonderland. On one particularly cold evening, Ethan and Mia stood side by side, gazing at Clara's grave beneath the starlit sky. The air was crisp and clear, and the world seemed perfectly still. "She'd love this," Mia whispered, her breath forming clouds in the frosty air. "Yeah," Ethan replied, smiling. "She really would." Hand in hand, they walked away, leaving behind footprints in the snow. Behind them, the cemetery glowed faintly under the moonlight, a quiet, sacred space where the past and present intertwined, forever linked by the power of memory and redemption. Winter settled over Willow Creek, bringing with it a sense of calm and reflection. The town had changed since the unveiling of Clara Bennett's memorial plaque. People spoke openly about the past, sharing stories they once kept hidden out of fear or shame. Conversations around dinner tables and coffee shops often turned to history, not just the grand events but the small, personal moments that shaped lives. Ethan and Mia found themselves at the heart of this cultural shift, celebrated not only for uncovering Clara's story, but for inspiring others to embrace their own legacies. Despite the newfound attention, Ethan and Mia remained humble. They didn't see themselves as heroes. They were simply two people who had followed their curiosity and stumbled upon something extraordinary. For Ethan, the experience had taught him the value of perseverance and empathy. For Mia, it reinforced her belief in the power of storytelling to heal wounds and bridge divides. Together, they decided to continue exploring forgotten histories, determined to give a voice to those who could no longer speak for themselves. One chilly December evening, Ethan and Mia returned to the cemetery. It had become a tradition for them to visit on the anniversary of Clara's supposed death, marking the day she had vanished from the world, and the moment her spirit began its century-long vigil. This year, however, felt different. The air was crisp and still, the kind of quiet that made you feel like the entire universe was holding its breath. A thick layer of snow covered the ground, muffling their footsteps as they walked among the graves. When they reached Clara's headstone, they paused, taking in the sight before them. The granite marker stood tall and proud, flanked by fresh flowers left by townsfolk who had come earlier in the day. Beside it, the memorial plaque gleamed under the moonlight, its golden lettering catching the faint glow of starlight. Everything about the scene felt peaceful, almost sacred. Ethan knelt down, brushing away a thin layer of snow from the base of the headstone. "Do you think she's really gone?" he asked quietly, his breath forming clouds in the frosty air. Mia crouched beside him, wrapping her scarf tighter around her neck. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe she is, or maybe she's just at peace now." Ethan nodded, staring at the inscription on the plaque. He remembered the first time he'd seen Clara's translucent form in the cemetery, her desperate plea for help echoing in his mind. Back then, he hadn't known what to expect, or even if he believed in ghosts. But now, standing here with everything they had uncovered, he realized how much he had grown. Clara's story had changed him, teaching him to face challenges head-on and trust his instincts. "I hope so," Ethan said finally. "She deserves to rest." As if responding to his words, a gentle breeze swept through the cemetery, carrying with it the faint scent of wildflowers. Snowflakes swirled lazily in the air, sparkling like tiny diamonds under the moonlight. Ethan and Mia exchanged glances, both sensing something unspoken yet undeniable. Clara was there, watching over them one last time. Though her form didn't appear this time, her presence was palpable. It wasn't eerie or unsettling. It was comforting, like a warm hug on a cold winter's night. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the feeling wash over him. When he opened them again, he noticed something unusual. Faint sparkles of light dancing near Clara's grave, as if her spirit lingered briefly before ascending into the heavens. "She's saying goodbye," Mia whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Ethan nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Yeah, and I think we should let her go." They stood there for a while longer, paying their final respects. Then, hand in hand, they turned and began walking back toward the entrance of the cemetery. Their footprints marked the otherwise untouched snow, a reminder of their connection to this place, and to Clara. The walk home was silent but companionable. Ethan and Mia didn't need to speak. They both understood the significance of what they had witnessed. Clara's journey had come full circle, and theirs had too, at least for now. Though they planned to continue uncovering forgotten stories, they knew nothing would ever compare to the impact Clara had on their lives. When they reached Ethan's house, Mia hesitated on the porch steps. "You know," she said, smiling softly, "this whole thing has made me realize something." "What's that?" Ethan asked, leaning against the railing. "That sometimes, the smallest actions can make the biggest difference," Mia replied. "We started with just a name on a headstone and look where it led us. Imagine what else we can do if we keep going." Ethan grinned, feeling a surge of excitement. "You're right. Who knows what other stories are waiting to be told?" "Exactly," Mia said, her eyes shining with determination. "But for now, let's take a break. I think we've earned it." "Agreed," Ethan said, laughing. "Let's grab some hot chocolate tomorrow and celebrate." "Deal," Mia said, waving as she headed home. "See you tomorrow." That night, as Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he thought about everything that had happened. From the moment he'd stepped into the cemetery and stumbled upon Clara's grave, his life had taken a turn he never could have predicted. What had started as simple curiosity had blossomed into something far greater, an adventure that had tested his courage, strengthened his friendships, and deepened his understanding of the world. He drifted off to sleep with a smile on his face, dreaming of snowy cemeteries, glowing plaques, and a woman whose spirit had finally found peace. In his dream, Clara appeared one last time, her form radiant and serene. She smiled at him, her eyes filled with gratitude, before fading into the night sky, leaving behind a trail of shimmering stars. When Ethan woke up the next morning, sunlight streamed through his window, bathing the room in warmth. He felt lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Clara's story was complete, her spirit set free, and he had played a part in making that happen. It was a legacy he would carry with him forever. Later that day, Ethan met Mia at the local cafe, where they sipped steaming cups of hot chocolate and laughed about their misadventures. As they talked, Ethan realized something important. Clara's story wasn't just about the past, it was also about the future. By honoring her memory, they had inspired others to seek truth, embrace history, and find meaning in the lives of those who came before them. And so, as winter gave way to spring, Ethan and Mia continued their work, uncovering new stories and keeping the spirit of exploration alive. But no matter where their journeys took them, they always remembered Clara, the girl who had brought them together and shown them the power of redemption and remembrance. In the end, her legacy lived on, not just in the cemetery or the plaque, but in the hearts of everyone she had touched. Through Ethan and Mia's efforts, she became more than a name etched in stone. She became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the enduring bond between the living and the dead. And though the cemetery remained silent once again, its beauty undisturbed by whispers or shadows, the legend of Clara Bennett endured, a timeless reminder that even in death one's voice could still be heard.